Everyone, and Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for joining us today for our weekly webinar from APPNA MERIT. We have an exciting guest today who's going to talk about robotics and how he's moving the field forward in terms of making robotics a reality in terms of patient and other specialties as well. So it is my deepest pleasure that I'm going to introduce Dr. Umair. Before I do that, we're going to go ahead and give you some housekeeping things. The first and foremost is that we have officially moved from education to innovation, and we are basically doing both. So these are a series of webinars that we are highlighting high achieving individuals from Pakistani diaspora who are supporting basically innovation in healthcare. Merit is, I'm grateful to be part of the Merit, and I'm grateful that we have pivoted towards innovation as well as continuing our efforts in education. Secondly, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. Make sure you put in your LinkedIn profile as well so we can connect over it. We are eventually going to create a LinkedIn group as well so that all of us can communicate better over a professional platform as compared to just WhatsApp and Facebook. We are also working on Discord, which is another of our community in which we will bring all of these innovators, etc., together moving forward as well. So I'm very grateful that you keep sharing your information, and make sure you put your questions in chat. At the very end, if there is any verbal questions, we'll ask you to open your mics up, and then we can ask those questions. So after further ado, I just want to make sure that I introduce Dr. Muhammad Umair Khan, who has done bachelor's and master's in mechatronics and from UET Lahore. He did his PhD from medical robotics from Hanhai University, Seoul, South Korea, and he was the youngest recipient of Seoul Startup Visa by Seoul Global Center. He is now has written more than 20 publications within the field of biomedical engineering, and he is now creating his own startup. And hopefully the idea is that he can tell us and teach us what he is doing, how we can support him in his efforts. So thank you so much, Dr. Khan, for taking this time and coming us and educating us as a whole. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Junaid, for the kind introduction. Without further delay, I will start my presentation. So the topic is like applications of robotics in healthcare and medical devices. So before going to the topic, I will first of all introduce myself. Like I came back to Pakistan in 2020, late 2020, and I joined in Pakistan UET Lahore Narowal campus back in February 2021, like last year. So UET Narowal campus is a recently built campus as compared to UET Lahore. So it has started back in 2012, and it has like following departments from electrical engineering to mechanical to civil to basic sciences. And in the faculty of electrical engineering, we have a department called Biomedical Engineering Department, and from where I belong. So what is the mission of the department? As compared to the university, the department started back in 2017. So only 2 batches are graduated yet, and others are still in the process. So it is a very relatively new department. With the aim to become the leading program in biomedical engineering by imparting methodological education training to our students and preparing them to become innovative and socially responsible engineers in healthcare industry. So yeah, this was like where I am today. So now coming to the topic. So what is medical robotics? As you all know, any robot that will perform different tasks in different fields can be termed as like a medical robot. In the specific, we can say a medical robot has an intelligent eye and intelligent hand, just to mimic the motion of a physician. So what its meaning? What is the meaning of the intelligent eye? It means like either endoscope or different imaging modalities like PET, CT, MRI, or various different imaging modalities, and the surgical navigation. These are basically the preparation for the eye part or the vision part of any medical robot. And then comes the hand part, which is called the intelligent hand. More specifically, in terms of medical robotics, you can say like endorist made by Da Vinci Robotic Systems. What is an endorist or an intelligent hand? It is just a some end effector that can follow and mimics the movement of a expert physician. So it can be either just a small scissor that can be used for different procedures, or it can be modified. As you can see, lower bottom, like different types of end effectors can be added. So starting from the end effector part, we can have like a master slave device, the famous Da Vinci. Then the companies are coming, like a Striker is coming in this field. Then there are various in terms of the labs based medical devices, from macro to micro robots. And so it is basically the amalgamation of intelligent eye and intelligent hand what makes a medical robot. So we can also categorize it like image guided surgical robot and endoscope guided surgical robot. So what are the image guided surgical robots? It can be, the famous is RoboDoc for the spine assistance. Then we have the, for heart tissue, skull or bone muscle, there are various image guided surgical robots. Then 3D image guided robot system for ENT, vascular interventions. And for the endoscope guided art, that can be used for minimally invasive surgery, for Da Vinci system, abdominal cavity, thoracic cavity, pelvic cavity. These can be either master slave devices, where master is basically the physician who can use his hands through different type of joystick to control the robot arm. And it can also be used for urology and the famous intuitive surgical companies.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands what Da Vinci means. So Da Vinci was the first FDA-approved robotic system that was initially used for mainly urological applications, including prostate cancer. And it decreased the time of operations and decreased the number of complications, given that it was able to perform that. Da Vinci has since increased its indications to be used in terms of robotics itself. So those who are not aware of the Da Vinci system, it is a US-based urological surgical system mainly, but it is increasing in both abdominal indications for surgery, and they are actually increasingly being more effective. It is an expensive, I think it's around $10 million machine at the moment, FYI. Sorry, sir, go ahead.
Thank you, Junaid, for your kind introduction about Da Vinci. So basically, Da Vinci is like the iPhone of like the different types of phones. Like this is we look up to Da Vinci like in making different type of robots. So as you know, like in terms of the medical robots, we have to make and approve from FDA if you have to usually practice that. In Korea, we have the KDA for Korea development, like a same to FDA, but with some limitations, and we can have much more easy access. So rather than waiting for FDA approval and then going for this one, in Korea, we have the KDA, and we can make a small device in the lab. After the clinical study, we can actually use in Korea. So now I can a little bit explain about the medical robotics and application. From head to toe, we can have different type of medically assistive devices that can be made in the field of medical robotics, starting from the brain part. Why we use medical robots for the brain surgery? Simple reason is that one, because the human hand cannot have that much precise accuracy. So we can have a small hole in the brain, and if there is a tumor, we can easily remove that. And from coming to the prosthetic side of the field, we can have either rehabilitation, different types of rehabilitation devices, from prosthetic hands to prosthetic legs for the people without the legs and arms. And these can either be controlled by the EMG signal of your body, and through now they are more going towards the brain signal, so that rather than following the muscles, it can also input from the brain. So as you can see, this is a prosthetic arm, it's all rigid. So in robotics, the new field that is emerging is called the soft robotics. Soft robotics means rather than we have actuators which are very hard and which have significant weight, we should have some type of robots that are much less lightweight, so that and mimic the same dexterity. And this field is called the soft robotics. So we have different types of soft robotic rehabilitation hands, as you can see in this one. And similarly, then we can have also a smart robotic system for catheter insertion inside the body for various types of procedures. So these are the systems that are actually after the insertion in the pulmonary artery through the needle, we can actually insert the catheter, and that catheter should be operated by master slave robotic device. Then we have a robotic prostate surgery, as you can mentioned by the Da Vinci robotic system, was the master of it. But now, with the passage of time, small labs from different parts of the world are making small devices that can not only fulfill all body parts, but can cater to one specific body part, and that has like either one scissor part or a clipper part and one endoscope, and it is enough for different surgery. Then we have like recently it has emerging like a robotic eye surgery, and the principle is the same, a small master and slave device, and the tool is modified so that it can perform that task. So now the interesting question comes, the level of autonomy. So because as a physician, because I'm an engineer, I think differently as comparison to physician, and physician thinks very differently. So the level of autonomy actually fill that gaps, because if you ask a physician like if he is facing some problem, he will go to the engineer, he will say like, I need this type of a robot for fulfilling this need. But the concept is like the level of autonomy, how much autonomy a physician wants to give to the robot that to perform that task. So mostly the physician, in few examples I will show you, like in my experience back in Korea, in Seoul National Hospital, we have designed 2 devices for them. So the physician asked me like, I don't want to be a master slave device, like I will be sitting in some chair, I don't want that. I should be present above the patient, but the limitation should be solved by your robot. So that means like he don't want the full autonomous system. He just needs some assistive device, assistive robot that will solve that problem. So in terms of the level of autonomy, it can be no autonomy at all, from robotic assistance to a task level autonomy, that can be small task level autonomous robot, to supervised autonomy, to high level autonomy. And the best example of high level autonomy is CyberKnife. As you know, like a Da Vinci robotic system, CyberKnife is a laser oriented tumor removal procedure. So the best part of this one, as the human breathes, so the tumor location can be changed because of the breath. So it can mimic that position accurately and doesn't damage other tissue. It can mimic the motion and removal of that tissue. And then comes the full autonomous robots that are still in the phases because of different reasons. Small procedures can be full autonomous, but all the procedure cannot be full autonomous because the physician should be in charge of that. So level of autonomy is very important in designing a medical robot, like how much the physician wants to take on his side and on the robot side. Then we should know about the global market of the medical robot. Currently in 2022, its market lies between $15 billion, and easily it will be in 2026, it will be $32 billion in the proposed estimates. So now I will explain like you about the 2 medical robots, about how they are designed and what are the limitations and how we have designed those robots. So back in Korea, my physician asked me, like my professor, which is on, basically I have 2 professors, one is with engineering background and one is basically with a medical background. So the medical background asked my professor, like we have the 2 problems whenever we have the vascular interventional procedures, they are like either the ultrasonography or fluoroscopy. By using those procedures, we find out that we have some limitations. So somehow you have to find out the solution for that. So in that regard, I have designed 2 robots for fulfilling the needs. So first one is basically whenever you have vascular intervention procedures, they are either done by ultrasonography or either by fluoroscopy. So in both the cases, there are some limitation. In case of ultrasonography, the biggest limitation is hands are preoccupied, musculoskeletal disorder, variable contact force. Similarly, in case of the fluoroscopy, the biggest problem is radiation exposure, and in some hospitals, passive radiation measurement. So before going further, I will briefly explain what is the arterial puncturing procedure. Like you just insert the needle inside the body. In some cases, very easy, but as I've told you, like in case of ultrasonography, the biggest problem we face is like the physician has to hold the needle in his hand and the ultrasound probe in the other hand. So he have a musculoskeletal disorder, which is in the long run can cause different tissue damage in the muscles of the physician. Similarly, So this is what I'm saying, like in case of ultrasonography guided arterial puncture, as you can see, the physician is holding a needle in one hand and the probe in the other hand. So both of hands are preoccupied. And because the patient comes once, but the physician is always there. So with the passage of time, after 10 to 8 years, the physician will have some kind of a musculoskeletal disorder. So to counter that, we have designed, we were asked to design some kind of a medical robot that can solve that problem. Similarly, the second problem was arterial puncture. You can do the arterial puncturing using fluoroscopy, but in case of the fluoroscopy, the biggest problem is radiation exposure. Similarly, in case like the physician is always there, but the patient comes once for a while. So in the long run, the physician in Korea, Seoul National University hospitals were having different types of skin diseases because of the abrupt direct exposure of the radiation. So why we use ultrasonography and fluoroscopy for that? Because the small arteries are hard to find using ultrasonography. So we have to do that using fluoroscopy, but in both the cases, there are some limitations. So as I have defined the problem, the hands of the physicians are preoccupied and surgeon has the strains of musculoskeletal disorders. And one more problem is the variable contact force. What is variable contact force? Because as human, our hands, while performing different tasks, vibrates little bit, but our muscles, they are able to take that vibration in the long run. So if there is a constant force on some muscle, then it's okay. But if there is a more abrupt variable contact force, because the physician is holding the needle, so it can actually damage that part. So we have to counter this one also. So that's why I have designed a small passive type robotic system, so that the physician, rather than sitting away from on some chair, he is just present over there and doing the task with his own hands. But now the biggest advantage is that the probe and the needle is holding by the passive type robot that has a small arm. Then there is a needle and guide wire holder, and then there is an ultrasound probe holder. And then the next problem was the constant force. As I have already mentioned, like constant force is very important, because if there is a variable force on the tissue because of the vibration of the hand, it may lead towards the different kind of problems to the tissue. So with our device, without our device, we have done some experimentation, like with the physician holding the ultrasound probe, without some experience, like a new physician coming to the party, and he wants to know what kind of forces that are on that tissue that we have measured. And then there comes the operator with experience. So in both the cases, as you can see, like operator without experience has variable forces applied on some kind of a tissue, but the operator with experience, he has somehow accurately applied those forces. But as you can see, the variation is large. So in our case, with our simple device, we have targeted this issue, like with operator without experience or with operator with experience. It doesn't matter. With this device, we have attached a roller build system that can apply a constant force, and the problem of variable force can be eliminated. Then comes the other problem, the musculoskeletal disorder, where both of the fingers of the hands of the fingers are already engaged at all the time. In this case, you can see the physician just wants to target the target's lesion and then position the probe and lock the mechanism, and doesn't need to hold anything. The probe is also attached to the probe holder, and needle is also attached. As you can see in this experimental study, you can see the physician just using a small roller once in a while can insert. In the first picture, you can see the blood coming out. And then after the successful insertion, he can easily insert the needle and the guide wire insertion. And then after fulfilling this task, he can remove this one and perform other kind of catheter insertion procedure easily. So we have noted down the time for this one. This procedure, it varies with respect to different types of animals. So without our device, it is like 4.5 minutes. And with our device, it is like reduced to 3.8 minutes. And if we have more number of trials, it can reduce to 3 minutes. So now comes the second part. Reduction of the operator radiation exposure using passive robotic type of device. So we have already have the passive arm, but we have modified now the end effector part. The end effector is basically the part where the needle is attached and the lever for the guide wire insertion. So as you know, like in various parts of the world, the physician wears thyroid collar and the protective guard for lead apron type, so to protect his body. But with this type of protection, still he needs more protection because his arms, hands, legs are still exposed. So we also countered that one, like how to make physician almost safe in that regard. So we have designed that prototype, and you can easily see in this one. On the left side, manually, the physician wants to insert the needle without any device, and you can see like he has a direct exposure of fluoroscopy, and his hands is just between inside the direct exposure on the left side. But with our simple device, which has end effector improvement, you can see that the physician is standing away from the source, and the reduction of the radiation is imminent. Similarly, we have also measured with our device of his hands, legs, and arms radiation, and measured some data. And clearly, the research paper is published also. It clearly verifies our data. Like we have 85% reductions of left hand radiation, then 89% reduction in the right hand, then 59% reduction in the left leg. Similarly, right leg 42%, left arm 27%, and 66% reduction in the radiation of the right arm. Then we have measured and did a comparative study, like without our device, the physician, and with our device, the physician, and the assistant standing next to the physician, what are the different dosage rates. So assistant without any device is much more closer to the physician, and physician with our device, you can clearly see like the reduction is much reduced, and it is as close to the assistant, which is standing away from the source of direct exposure. So yeah, these are the two examples of the medical robots that I have designed, and I have designed back in Korea, and we have like the patents over there, and we have done the clinical study, that one. And coming back to Pakistan, I have tried to transform the same concept of medical robotics to come here and develop a small lab called Human Robotics Lab. And recently we have tried to develop without much resources. We have tried to develop and mimic those systems. So as you can see, this is the master side and this is the slave side. This is a small prototype just in the first phase of the making. We have tried to develop that one. And now we have also introduced some type of innovative things inside that one. As you know, the Da Vinci robotic system till now doesn't have haptic feedback. So what is haptic feedback? Haptic feedback means that sense of touch, like whenever you are playing with a rigid robot manipulators and they are going inside the body and you doesn't know how much force they are applying to the patient, so that doesn't make sense. Like with only visual feedback, the surgeon manipulates the devices, but in real, as you know, like with your hand, you have that feel like how much force you are going to apply in real-time surgery. So that concept we have tried to mimic in our small prototype. What we have done is like we have actually used different types of force sensor to mimic the experience of the haptics and include in our device at a small scale. So in terms of sonography, ultrasonography, when the force is applied, when the force is applied on the body, you can clearly see like if the 5 Newton force is the criteria which needs to be applied on certain tissue. So if that force exceeds this level, it automatically generates a small alarm on our master side, and it will give the information to the master at the master level, the physician, like the force is applying a large force is applied. Similarly, we have also done the visual feedback. A small screen with alarm will ring bell alarm if the 5 Newton force exceeds. Similarly, this is the one prototype that we have tried to develop in our lab. Now we have also developed a small prototype which is called the master slave robot for suturing. So in this one is also a haptic type of device with visual feedback. We have a small endoscope attached to the end effector, and a small needle can easily be inserted in our small experimentation study with help of master slave robot. So at master side, we have a small joystick that can be easily operated by the physician, and at the slave side, it is a small robot that can be mimic the dexterity of the hands, but still it is early phase, so it does not accurately insert the needle as specified. But with the next two prototypes in coming year, we can have a suturing device, because as you know, in COVID-19, the physician has been removed from the direct exposure of the patient. So these type of devices actually helps in taking that limitation, and actually help provide the master slave for providing different types of procedure. These are not limited to suturing tasks. The end effector can be modified, as in Da Vinci, the end effector can be modified. For this robot also, the end effector can be modified. These are basically robotic holders that can be used for different types of surgeries. So these are basically for the robot part. Now I will discuss about different types of medical devices that we are working on, and we have tried to develop the first prototypes in our lab.
Before we move on, for those devices, are you using depth cameras or are you using one single camera for detection?
Yeah, in case of that one, we have tried to use a small technique called Aruka markers. Rather than using different types of expensive depth cameras or NDIs or different, we have tried to use a technique called using your own webcam. There is a technique called Aruka markers. So if you place those markers on specified place, you can actually dealt with that depth type positioning. So, but this is because of the budget phase, we are not actually focusing on that one. We have tried to mimic that one, but we are not done the masters on it yet. We have to, with the passage of time, we will use different types of cameras, but we have used Aruka marker technique that can engage with 3D slicer. As you know, the software, it can easily engage with 3D slicer, and it will give you a surgical navigation dimension in that particular feedback. So apart from that one, we have also used a small endoscopic camera that will give you the direct exposure, direct feedback, visual feedback from the site. And that surgical navigation part is done by a camera that can be installed on the upside of that one with a small webcam type, but there would be a small Aruka markers placed, and then the depth issue can be resolved through that.
Thank you.
Okay. So now I will discuss small about the medical devices. So in Pakistan, the first one is IOMT ASTHMA monitoring device. As you know, like different percentage of the population are suffering from the asthma disease. So without doing much resources, we have tried to use the same inhaler, but we have developed a small circuitry and attached to that. So what we have done, like we have added much sensors, like we have a sensor pulse oximeter, we have a temperature sensor, we have a humidity, we have a gas sensor, and we have number of puffs. So as you know, like the patient, when he wants to, when it is a critical asthma patient, and when he's choking, he puffs regularly and more frequently. So that data is transferred to his close relative in terms of email, and that data can be easily transferred using IOMT, Internet of Medical Things, to his physician, so that he may know, like, your patient has done that number of puffs today and he is like choking, or he is in bad condition, or otherwise there are different 5 parameters from temperature, humidity, gas to pulse oximeter, all built in a small this prototype that can actually help those. If we can, this is the first prototype, it is a little bit heavy, but in the future we want to make it a small unique device that can be a cost-effective asthma monitoring device. Then comes a small digital otoscope. As you know, in Pakistan, all over everywhere, they use like a conventional type of otoscope. So we have tried to use a small camera that can be placed in with the different resolution and can easily be attached to the your mobile phone, and we have developed a small app that can be logged in. As a small patient sitting in a small part of the village can easily contact us best physician in some big country. So through our app, just log into our app, and it can also be using IP address. You can log in through that and you can see what's going on. It's for digital otoscope. It's called, also can be modified for nasal also. So we have tried to mimic a small medical device. Similarly, this is a very interesting device, and I'm working on, and I have also discussed with other members of the APPNA about this device. It's called the infant safety band. In Pakistan, as you know, like in the news, if you just switch on the news, you rarely, like after every frequently, most frequently, like in days, you can see this type of problem occur. What is the problem? Like mostly the babies are kidnapped, the newborn babies are replaced by different babies. So we have tried to develop a small bands type device, infant safety device. So when the distance from the mother or the father who is sitting in the hospital, in the same operation room or the bedroom, they are is increased, a smaller alarm will be generated. It will not only go to the receptionist part, but also other members of the family will be alarmed, like your kid is not in the safe boundary region and he has been moved outside the safe region. So he can, the other members can quickly come and solve this issue. Similarly, during COVID-19, we have done a small automation of the building part. So we have integrated a small sensors, like a small temperature sensors and number of counters. So when the temperature is below the approved level, the door will be automatically open. Otherwise, there is an alarm will be generated and number of persons will be counted. So that in the COVID-19 situation, when the universities were closed all over Pakistan, we have small developed the prototype so that we can have the new normal going on. Similarly, this is called the safety helmet for mine workers. So what is this one? Is basically a small IoT based device. As you know, all over the world also it's bigger problem, but in Pakistan also the mine workers died and nobody knows where he is because the depth of the mine is very large. So nobody knows where he is. So basically in any case of the collision with the helmet or any gas in the mine, we have different types of sensors that can readily give the information in types of app. And because you cannot have that communication in the mines, we have a Zigbee type communication that can be installed in that mine, and at the control center easily different types of multiple sensors are installed there, from temperature sensor to pulse oximeter to gas sensors to the collision sensor are integrated, and that information can easily be on your app. Similarly, this is for the blind assisted device. As you can see, it is very a cheap, cost-effective solution for the blind part. A small glasses has been developed with ultrasonic sensor, and as some kind of a obstacle comes inside, it can give you the alarm. There's a problem because of the cost effectiveness, the range can differ, and we have developed this device in 3 phases. It can be a glass goggle, it can be a handband, and it can be a badge on your shirt. Similarly,
I just want to give a little bit of update. So for number one, when you said as far as the asthma device is concerned, there's a company in US that is actually developing and raised $20 million. For the otoscope and the nasal scope, there's a company called TytoCare that raised $50 million last year for this particular device, and it is currently available on Best Buy. The third thing that you said, that the safety monitoring helmet, specifically with Zigbee standard, which is peer-to-peer networking, is specifically good for underground and everything. There's one more company that I forgot the name of that has recently done a major funding round. And lastly, for your blindness thing, actually iOS is going to release in version 16, which is going to come out on the WWDC, which is WWDC next year, a complete assistive technology framework where developers can directly interact with their phones as well and integrate your devices into the iPhone iOS to enable these new assistive technologies exactly at the same way where healthcare kit, care kit, and research kit are integrated. So as you can see that, you know, the bigger tech companies are creating platforms to enable these kind of technologies. Not to say one more thing, of course, Google released the Health Connect last month, which will also integrate air purity systems and air, levels of pollution all over the world within their application database from Health Connect. So when you are taking those puffs, you will be able to correlate it automatically in terms of pollution levels, because Google is going to provide that data to you. So, I mean, I'm extremely impressed, and I just wanted to give you that there's a significant, massive commercial and funding value in all of these projects. And I just wanted to make sure that, people understand that how the US system is also moving forward with these innovations as well.
Thank you. So this is very interesting project. As you know, like different types of IoT-based remote health monitoring units are available in Pakistan. They are basically the software houses. What they are lacking is like they don't have the sensor part. Like from different types of in your APPNA MERIT also some people come and they have like a just AI part, software part is done. Like they have the data of this patient comes, and that they can be easily IoT based delivered to the physician remotely, either through the voice cam or the video conferencing for different types of telemedicine routine. So, but what I have changed in this one is like IoT based remote health monitoring system. So if any patient comes in a rural village in Pakistan back somewhere, he can easily without any devices over there, we can place this system over there that has simply 3 to 4 sensors. Now it has heart rate, body temperature, SpO2, pulse oximeter, and it can be integrated multiple more sensors. So that sensors will be initially given to the attached to the patient, and that data will be readily available to the best physician available any part of the world or any part of the country in the developing world or the developed world. So that is a small app-based device which currently takes the hardware data of the patient, like rather than if you go in the remote health worker in Pakistan, he will ask you, take your temperature and tell me what are the symptoms you're going through. So that is done by this system. It's small sensor part and readily available. The initial checkup is done through this one, like temperature, SpO2, heart rate, ECG. It can be integrated and then can be through app, can be remotely given to all over where it is needed. So it is also similarly to IOMT COVID monitoring system. We have also like in Pakistan, like last year, as you see, the COVID all over the world creates havoc. So in Pakistan, what we try to do, we doesn't measure the COVID, but monitor the COVID. For example, if a patient has those symptoms, previously in Pakistan, we are measuring the SpO2 level and the temperature level. So it's also a measuring band over there. And if those levels go up, you can say the initial screening is done and that the patient may go suffer to have COVID or other diseases, you can say. So, and this is one interesting project also, IoT knee rehabilitation device. Basically, this idea was given to me by APPNA MERIT. I forgot the name. Basically, he's one of the premium member of APPNA MERIT. In my first talk, like back in September, we have discussed this device and I'm working on it now. So it is basically IoT-based knee rehabilitation device, and ROMTech has done, ROMTech, the early startup has just raised quite few money for this device, and we have just done the initial prototyping, and we are going towards like making a device which is not only for the initial patient, like after the surgery, after first day of the surgery, he should have a device which will be generalized, like we have CPMs, continuous passive movements. So I want to modify the device of continuous passive movement to these type of like a ROMTech device that can have rehabilitation for particular patients. For example, the first 2 weeks is more critical. You cannot move your leg, you cannot have those free movements. So that can be done with the CPM part, but our generalized device can also provide like after the rehabilitation part also by providing those movements, easily bendable movements, and that data will be easily available to the remote applicant using the app, and your physician or orthopedic surgeon doesn't need to go, you don't need to go there and do the physiotherapy thing. You can go to the home and do that one, and the real-time data will be given to your physician part. So this is the early phase of that one. We will have the rigid prototype, a small type of robot that will do the initial one, and also the rehabilitation part of 3 to 4 weeks, like from 3 to 4 weeks, what kind of rehabilitation he needs to do that. And one, I would like to mention one of my collaborations. This is Dr. Musharraf Alam. He is from the Dowd University. So we have actually graduated from the same university, from Hanyang University, Korea. So after coming back, we have also collaborated together. So he has done like a small smartphone-based diabetic retinopathy device. So what the device looks like, it has like a decision-making capability on the basis of AI, no DR, no digital retinopathy, mild DR, moderate, severe, or proliferative. So on the basis of that one, we have categorized the device, and it is basically the cheap version of the really conventional, expensive, high-end imaging device. Then you need to go there and you need to do digital retinopathy because the symptoms are not readily available and you lose vision abruptly. So this is a very smart solution. Like any phone you can connect with our lens, with our this portable lens, we can take the image in real time, and our AI based small app will process that data and give you a initial much more, not very accurate, perfectly accurate, but our results accuracy lies in 70 to 75% in, and it can easily check like no DR, DR, and moderate. So that's it. Thank you from my side.
No, that was just mind-blowingly amazing, Dr. Khan. This was fantastic. As you can see, we have discussed over the past few seminars that overall the compute power requirements are decreasing in terms of availability of machine learning models as an open source are also available much often. We are over here with APPNA and Tajdeed, which is sort of our funding arm, are trying to basically support these kind of innovations here in Pakistan, specifically also making sure that the creators are actually given the most amount of availability of the resources moving forward. I'm going to open up to our panelists so for their comments and questions. I think Dr. Bhatti is here first. So Danish, do you mind taking over some comments and questions?
Yes, Junaid, thank you. So I have a few comments and I have a lot of questions, but probably cannot cover all the questions today. But let me start by saying that I am since I've met Umair, I'm thoroughly impressed by his work, his drive, his ideas, creativity, and I really believe that people like him are the future of a successful Pakistan, and we need to be cognizant of that. इस तरह के लोग बड़ी जल्दी lose हो जाते हैं to people outside who could pay more, who could support more. So we have to be very appreciative of all the work that Umair is doing. I think definitely we have moved quite a bit the needle in the software industry, and that is definitely a low-hanging fruit. But the real strength of a nation comes out of the hardware capabilities. और ये अमेरिका को भी अभी realize हो रहा है कि how challenging it is to get chips and chip technology and get started by in the hardware space. So I think हम low hanging fruit में इतने ना distract हो जाएं कि हम भूल जाएं कि we need to have the capacity of manufacturing, designing, creating actual physical devices. So I pay a much more value on what Umair does as compared to creation of a new EMR or software system or creation of a new program. It's much more painstaking to design a hardware solution. It takes a lot more effort, a lot more iteration, a lot more creativity, and a lot more skill. So I really, from APPNA MERIT and personally, we want to thoroughly support what Dr. Umair and people like him are doing in Pakistan in robotics. I think जब हम ये robotics की बात कर रहे हैं और software products की solutions की बात कर रहे हैं, I think इसमें दो हमारी future consumer markets हैं. एक तो home market है कि we can offer cheaper and more homegrown solutions of products that might be available in other countries, or other countries might have a more polished product, they may have a more advanced product and more created product, but they put a lot more premium on it. अगर आप iPhone की example ले लें, iPhone की जो manufacturing cost है वो तकरीबन $150 होती है एक phone के ऊपर, और वो जो sell होता है वो $1000 पे on average sell होता है, और that's like a 9 times premium on a product that they have manufactured. और यही हाल हर जगह पे है, स्टेंट्स में और डिवाइसेस में और रोबोटिक्स में, हर एक में, कि they charge a huge premium so that we basically subsidize their further research and development. And we need to bring that subsidization to our own markets and home, so we subsidize them to do research and new product development instead of subsidizing the foreign market. और ये जो import bill आ जाता है कि जी हम इतनी चीजें मंगवा रहे हैं, इतनी चीजें मंगवा रहे हैं, वो import bill भी हमारा balance of trade खराब करता है. और we are in this cycle for last 30 years कि we just, हम कहते हैं कि अपना product हम इतना अच्छा बनेगा नहीं, तो हम बाहर से ले आते हैं. What China did was that he started creating products for home which were much more cheaper, of course, less quality, more flimsy, easily breakable, not as productive. But then the market actually picked up on it, and they didn't buy, iPhones, everyone, or other phones. And then over the year, over a decade, they were able to then make their products gradually better and better by feeding into the R&D and research costs and subsidizing those markets. So I think we need to start that. We need to have a homegrown industry of, even if it's of a comparably less effective product or less polished product, it's still our product. And we need to buy that, and we need to use that, and we need to create that kind of industry. क्योंकि अभी manufacturing बहुत पीछे है. अभी let's say कि Umair creates a very nice monitoring system for environment, and you can buy a slightly more expensive but better product from China or any other country. आप उसकी बजाय अगर आप अपना खरीदना चाहते हैं, मसला ये कि वो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग की जो स्किल्स और कैपेबिलिटीज हैं वो भी अभी डेवलप नहीं हुई पाकिस्तान में, कि आप एक प्रोटोटाइप को लेके उसके 10,000 महीने के कैसे बनाओगे. And unless we start buying our own products, how will that manufacturing develop in Pakistan? और फिर ऑफ कोर्स जो दूसरी मार्केट है वो इंटरनेशनल मार्केट है, आजकल ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड है, और वहाँ पे आई थिंक पीपल लाइक जुनेद आर एक्सट्रीमली useful for someone like Umair to tell him what features are international market looking for, so you can create a product that you can then either manufacture for global market or just sell the idea or design to them to feed into your R&D and get more products created. And then I have a lot of questions about all the products. We have had some discussion before. It's amazing. If I quickly recap, Umair, my understanding is that you have previously worked on in Korea 2 different robots, one just to give more distance from the field of the patient so that you don't have radiation exposure, and the second one was more of an accurate control. So rather than doing it with your hand, use control a robot to do it, and it's easier to control a robot, and now you get a more stable hand and less injury of repetitive tasks. And now you're reproducing the whole thing in Pakistan with lower resources, and trying to find alternative ways of recreating what you've already done in Korea with more resources. And then your own ideas of an asthma inhaler attachment to monitor, dose or side effects. And if somebody's taking 3-4 more puffs in a some go, an alert can be created and generated and sent to the family. कि जी आपका बच्चा जो है वो बार-बार inhaler use कर रहा है, कहीं उसको asthma attack तो नहीं हो रहा, उसको check कर लें. और उसका टेम्परेचर मॉनिटरिंग और एनवायरमेंटल टॉक्सिन मॉनिटरिंग, कि आपका इनहेलर आपको बता रहा है कि you need to get out of this environment because it's have too much of air pollution and you will get an asthma attack. So imagine how useful and creative that product is, and then child safety monitoring bracelet and things like that. It's really amazing, the breadth of the creativity that you've shown, Umair, and I'm very supportive and would love to work with you more. Thank you.
No, I'm actually, again, thank you so much, Danish, for your comments. And clearly there is a lot of breadth to definitely the amount of projects that are going. I'm going to move on to Fareed Surya, and then we're going to move on to questions from the audience.
Thank you, Junaid. I wouldn't take much time because I think we don't have much of a time left, and I think audience may have probably a lot of questions. Thank you, Umair. That was excellent initiative that you're taking in Pakistan. I just was kind of like, I'm curious, is that what kind of limitations are you facing with taking that initiative? You have worked in Korea also, and you realize how the equipment and how many facilities are available over there. And in Pakistan, I think getting even the microcontrollers and everything, there are very limited choice of microcontrollers you have in Pakistan. I mean, I saw that you're using UNO, and I don't know if you have more recent microcontrollers like ESP32 and those available over. and how frequently, and also what kind of hardware choices you have. I mean, considering that you're using steppers and you're using different kind of like this robotic equipment, and when the robotic actually goes hand to hand with like machining, and you do need like a good machining facility who is working with you, or you have your own mill or something to CNC mill to do all those things. So wanted to know what kind of facilities you are, or what kind of hurdles you're facing in achieving what you were able to do in Korea.
So thank you for the question. So basically, coming back to this university, it's a very in remote area. So we are actually a developing university. Like this department has started just in 2017. So the labs are in the phase of tender, but I, on my behalf, on my own, I've tried to make with my resources, try to set up a way rather than waiting for the resources to come and make the things matter. At the prototype phase, I have tried to convince the near my university, there are different lathes. Operators are available there. We just design on SolidWorks. We give them and brief them like we need this type of a thing. They will machine them for ourselves. And as we have used ESP32, because mostly the resources come from my side or my students, so we are not that much in the resources part that we are lacking. So now we are transferred from the Arduino Uno to ESP32. We have used it for 1 or 2 projects, but yeah, it is not very much common in our labs. Also the M5 stack, it is the mini computer that have just stormed in M5 stack that has all the alarms, like the different sensors. So we want to incorporate also for different types of that one. So basically till now we are limited because of the resources we are doing on our own, just going to the late part, designing development on the software, and then going to the late part and then manufacturing. That's why the prototypes don't look that much exciting, but yeah, with the passage of time, they have like, if the things are right, then we can have those things can be countered.
I'm going to start with one question of mine, and then we'll move forward with the audience. So when we are looking at, I'm going to put my investor hat on. And one of the things I look for is what we call base technologies and then the final product. And base technologies has its own market. For example, the reason that I was talking about the depth camera was that if we can make a Kinect-like device, which is much cheaper, which is now possible with 2 webcams and even a premium device with a LiDAR camera, which is available for like $30 now, if you look at the China market. The question is that you can extensively create an operating system around that device and that device that will be usable for multiple different applications for robotics. Have you looked into what we call the base level products that can be generalizable in different robotics products, period, moving forward? And then number 2 would be that I understand that you have looked at multiple, mashallah, projects, and without any doubt, this is impressive. But when I talk to founders, the one thing I ask for is that what is the one minimal viable product that is the highest commercial value? So what are your thoughts on those 2 questions?
Yeah, one thing, like the second question I will want to answer, like the IoT based knee type and the ASTHMA monitoring device, that has the market value also, and in the long run that can be a very successful project. For example, the knee type is very innovative product if it is made, because no such type is present. Because currently you have CPMs which are very much to the bed type, but you don't have something in the Pakistan, because the idea came from the IoT based knee rehabilitation or from the ROMTech, who is currently investing much more, and they have a small cycle base, and the data can be gone to the physician part. But the limitation is there is no sensor attached on the knee, just a small goniometer is attached and thus giving the movements. But we can install the camera part also, like whether the knee is actually bending towards movement is actually correct or not, make a small decision part. Also, we can have that motion of EMG sensors, like what muscles are activated after the surgery, and we can also have a small graph and it can be displayed on a small screen. So we can introduce those things in our IoT based knee rehabilitation device. And ASTHMA, because of the non-availability of the sensors, you can see like the ASTHMA, there is a big battery hanging over there, so it is not it is just a prototype version. That's why small sensors, if available, it can be a small miniature version of the ASTHMA can be done. And that ultrasound part, because my PhD was in two phases, medical robotics and human robot interaction. That I have not discussed, because human robot interaction means how you can pick a small pencil or a pen from your dashboard, because a robot doesn't know, because he doesn't have a brain. So that part is different, in which we have like an image and physical modeling of the manipulators. So that was for the different. So I want to continue, because it is my second year in terms of the ultrasound and radiation part. So these are just the applications, but the robot is the same. It is a robotic hand manipulator that can be modified for different types of versions. So the third part is like, I want to develop some type of a robotic modular robot. Modular robot means it can be modified according to the need of your application. For example, you never need a 6 degree of freedom robot who can pick actually everything in your operation room. It can be modified into 2 links and perform this task. Then it can be modified into 4 links, 5 links, as required for that task. So it can be modified in that one. And the third part that it was very simple. And I also contacted few companies in Pakistan, but they are software based. They are not much interested, like the hardware part at remote healthcare. Initial checkup, because it is not in the remote health part, the consultant over there is not much more accurate. The thermometer is either broken or don't have that much thermometer. So a small sensitive device over there give the initial input to the doctor, like these have following symptoms are there. Now he can move like further what kinds of systems you need. So that is integration of that, as mentioned, like ESP32 board is easily available. We can integrate that one in that one for the different types of sensors. So we can move forward in that regard also.
Thank you. There's an audience question by Manhaj Khoker that there's clearly a leapfrogging opportunity with the advent of 3D printing. What are your comments on that?
Because in Korea, when you design a robot, you first of all go for 3D printing. But 3D printing has small play between them. If you connect different devices over there, there is not much accurate. So we need to go to the aluminum part. 3D devices are just for a master type. 3D printing material can be used for a master side joystick you can make over there. But if you want to make a real insertive robot, or the other part would be aluminum, stuff like that should be there, because there is no play between them. Other issue that I am facing today is like the import of the 3D printer is still in Pakistan is like we need some kind of a government permission to do that in our lab, because they think like it can be used in different ways. So that's why from the start, I have been giving my tender, asking different one to give me one 3D printer, but still now I didn't get one, because it is very easily available, easily making the prototype one. But the other part, 3D printer has a lack because of the electricity issues in Pakistan. So we just make a prototype on our software, give to the lathe one, they make our little bit structure. So yeah, these are facilities that are making lacking us for making actually a real prototype in the future. So these things that need to be countered for.
Actually, I just ordered a 3D printer for myself. That is $500 from Anchor, which is 2 different machines, and then can actually create what you're suggesting now, because the technology has truly decreased in price, that I can afford one in a home for a hobby purposes here in US. I agree that it runs for 12 hours, and if there's a electricity problem, then you're done, right? I mean, your whole model is ruined, and that is something that you cannot actually control, unfortunately.
Yeah, in Korea also, I want to mention also, like they have the latest 3D printers. But the point is, if the plastic that going to be melt in the nozzle is not accurate, even if you have electricity, the prototype will be lost. So you have to have the most accurate, then we can have gone for that one 3D printing part. Yeah, but it is a necessity for making the prototyping one. Initial prototyping is a must.
Dr. Surya will deliver the final comments and ending comments and question if he has one.
No, I think, yeah, I completely agree with Dr. Umair. I've been doing robotics stuff and doing 3D printing and doing machining and milling. And when you are kind of like you want absolutely no play, especially